Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Foster, and I am the Head of Tech and Innovation at Tech UK. For those of you who don't know, Tech UK is the UK's tech trade association. So essentially, it's our job to represent tech companies, big and small, and basically showcase their technology and what impact that will have for the UK's society, economy, and the planet in the years to come. However, you are not here to listen to me today. Today, we're going to be discussing how we can keep the lights on in a global recession and how uncertain economic environments might impact quantum investments. And to discuss that, I am joined by an absolutely fantastic panel who are going to share all their insights in a relatively short amount of time. So I'm delighted to be joined directly next to me by Steve Suarez, who is an innovator in the space and a board member at Classic. I'm also delighted to be joined by Dr. Ling Ji, who is a general manager at Tencent, by Dr. Bob Suter, who is a vice president at Inflection, and finally, but last but certainly not least, Rick Howe, who is a partner at a company called Speed Invest. So thank you all so much for joining me here today. I think we should probably just jump straight into it with the questions.
Excellent.
So as investors and innovators, in the quantum ecosystem, you're often talking to a lot of very exciting companies, a lot of new companies working on particularly innovative quantum technologies. But what are the successful companies getting right in this innovation cycles? How are you working with them to set clear expectations or clear KPIs? Steve, since you're next to me, I think I'll go to you first.
Sounds good. It's funny, everybody talks about KPIs, and a lot of quantum companies come to me and talk to me about their qubits and how they do error correction. And the reality from a banking perspective is we want to keep it simple. What value are you adding? What value can you add to us? So that's kind of what we're looking at is how do we use this technology, and how does this technology work better than some of the other technologies like classical computing? And it's actually quite funny because from a classical perspective, when I go back to the classical team, they're like, oh no, we can do it better. And if anything, quantum is creating competition with the classical people because now they're saying, look, we're going to sharpen our pencils and we can give you guys better performance. So using that actually is help. So the qubits, the amount of qubits is great. I hear about how the error correction is great, but the reality, the bottom line is how much value can you provide for us?
And just very quickly following up on that, I want to give everyone a chance to speak on this question, but you mentioned value right at the end. What is value for you?
You were saying quick, so you want me to make it quicker than I no, I'll answer quicker. For us, it's providing like true value. So think about collateral optimization. Can I increase the not only the speed, but the quality of the output by 1 or 2 bips and actually do it better than the classical people? So looking at that kind of stuff and what is bottom line, how can we benefit, or how can I increase security? For the bank, and I'm sure we can talk more about that, but you told me to keep it short, so.
It's not necessarily me. We've got a very intimidating clock right here, but thanks, Steve. Thanks so much for getting us started. Bob, would you like to go next? I should also say, if anyone wants to introduce themselves a little bit more than I did, please do take the opportunity.
Sure. I'm Bob Sutor. I was at IBM for 39 years, and change of pace. 15 months ago, I left and joined a 200-person company called Quanta, now called Inflection. So I am not an investor, but I have gone from, let me say, that a very large company that doesn't need VC, being IBM, to one that we just closed a Series B, 110 million last November. So from my perspective, it's how do we get money, and what's the platform, but also just in looking around. One thing. So first of all, let's tackle quantum computing. We don't need the 37th quantum computing company, no matter how smart you are. Really, if I were an investor kind of looking out, you've got an awful lot of people ahead of you, maybe just as smart as you are. And oh, by the way, a lot of them are going to fail, because startups fail. We need to start looking at the much larger quantum ecosystem. And I think the last panel, the last discussion was a great example. Because without quantum networking, we're going to have a lot of very isolated devices, be them quantum computers or, as Sir Peter was saying toward the end, these quantum sensors collect data. And that's the heart of computing. It's not processing, it's data, right? What do we do with that sort of interesting thing? So for me, as if I were to be looking at startups, I would say, do you really understand the market dynamics of where quantum is today? Do you understand why people would want to invest, what actually will be important? And it's not only private investment, it's governments. It's non-dilutive funding that is really critical. And so for me, a startup that does not get that is just maybe needs to do more homework, shall we say.
I'd love to circle back around to that thing about government setting the pace a little bit later on. But Ling, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ling, and maybe a couple words about my journey. So, quantum has been my passion for many years. I did my doctorate in quantum computing at Oxford University. Actually, the last session, Dr. Stephanie Simmons, she was from my research group at Oxford, and Sir Peter gave me some of my earliest quantum lectures over 20 years ago. And following that, I was a Leverhulme Fellow at Imperial College for about, so I worked at Imperial for about 8 years. And I joined Tencent over 6.5 years ago to lead our efforts in Europe. As some of you may know, Tencent is a global technology giant. As of today, the market cap is roughly $420 billion. And we have product offerings in covering every aspect of people's life, from eating, music, games, social network, and so on. So my own role is looking at frontier technology investments, as well as some of the other more entertaining side, music, games, and other deep tech sectors like fintech, biotech, and so on. So with investments, actually, how to pitch to investors, or how do you bring value to be so to the big corporate customers, or having investors see it so clearly is challenge all the startups face. But I think it's particularly important for quantum startups for two main reasons. One is quantum, by definition, is very long term, so it could be many years from now, or even decades, when we have a major breakthrough like large language model this year in the AI space. And secondly, I think most of the founders in quantum computing, they are very scientifically minded. So perhaps writing up business plans or having business models or worked up very early on is not the most natural thing. So I think, in general, for any startup, the key is what unique offering. As Bob mentioned, we don't need that many startups doing the same thing, but what's the most unique, defensible technology you can bring on the table? And what's the, back to Steve, what's the use case, what's the value you can bring to your customers? And we probably don't need to see you have great bottom line right at this moment, but the way to show investors you can generate revenues very quickly in the near term, and or acquiring users, and then in the longer term there is a route to profit that's also very important.
Thank you. And Rick?
Cool. Hello, everyone. So unfortunately, I'm from the dark side, the investor side. So I think two things I really want to suggest, or whoever, in the quantum startup you should do. The first one, fundraising capability. So we have seen lots of quantum startup in the last 5 years. Most of them actually has very strong technical credibility. So therefore, no question for that. However, if you think about you're building a quantum startup, you need a lot of money. Unfortunately, that's the past. Therefore, apart from the technical skill set you have, you really need to build your own fundraising capability, how you can convince investors to give you some money, even without any business value sometimes. So particularly in the early stage. That's the first, I think, point from my side. Secondly is non-dilutive financing is quite important in Europe. So if you look at probably most of the quantum startup, you need a very specialized R&D solution. You need to have a research lab and also to purchase lots of expensive equipment at early stage. And all those non-dilutive funding can really provide a great opportunity for you to kick off the business. So that's probably the major 2 points we have seen in the early stage quantum startup that who can really stand out, in the later stage. That's really quick for me.
Fantastic. Gosh, we can go in so many different directions there, can't we? But some fantastic insights to get us started there. I would actually love to circle around to Bob's point there
Okay.
to kind of get us started. Obviously, this panel is kind of about global macroeconomic environments right now. But the investment ecosystems in different regions are obviously looking at different types of quantum technologies. And Bob, I'll go to you first, but anyone on this panel who would like to come in on this, what regional trends are you seeing in investment around quantum?
Well, it's a big world, and that makes it complicated. It's very inhomogeneous, shall I say. Starting in the US, I would say that the appetite now for quantum computing investment is fairly low. And part of that is there have been 3 companies that have gone public. 2 of them are, let's say, struggling a bit. So understanding exactly what the payoff is. Did I get the model right? Is this proceeding the way I thought it was going to be? Part of it is just fear, Silicon Valley Bank, right, failing. Sometimes, I'm going to take that money, I'm going to put it under the mattress, right? I'm not going to give it to anybody, I'm just going to hang on to it until generally psychologically things feel better. But then also just, people realizing that quantum computing is taking a while. And we did say it would take a while, but nevertheless, when 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years go on, people are saying, maybe my money should be in AI, maybe it should be this, what's this ChatGPT thing, and so forth. In other parts of the world, I would say questions of sovereignty enter into this a little bit more. So each country wants to say, we are the best in quantum computing. And it's often computing. In the UK, though, you do talk much more about the other quantum technologies like sensing and so forth. And now whether that is kind of national, we would say chest beating, we are the best, we're the greatest, and whatever, sometimes venture funding is linked to that. We are a country X venture capital fund, we will invest in the same countries, funding and things like this. But unfortunately, when that happens, is that nobody will have enough money, right? Look, if you're doing serious quantum hardware, you're going to need hundreds of millions of dollars a year, ultimately, to roll this out. No one needs one Midland-sized quantum computer from you, right? Really? Because there are bigger quantum computers. And so this challenge of scaling for hardware is going to be very hard. So the more this money gets kind of spread lightly, as some people say, as peanut butter, over the quantum toast, the more they will struggle, and it will only be the really big, the well-funded countries, right, or the well-funded companies, as we've seen so far, that will succeed. So personally, I think we need to have much greater cooperation across country borders, bearing in mind geopolitical events and things like this. But we have to look at an international supply chain for quantum, and we have to look at international talent.
Yeah, if I can just add, and I'm going to give the opposite view. I'm the optimist, so kind of looking at. I like kind of what Japan is doing. I know Germany just launched a quantum cloud in Stuttgart with our friends from Terra Quantum. The UK actually announced that $2.5 billion investment, which they're kind of putting out there. A good friend of mine, actually a professor at MIT, he's sitting on the board of Biden's quantum advisory board. And the fact that the government has an advisory board on quantum means that they're taking it seriously and they're looking at it. I agree with you. I think the fact that some of these companies have oversold and kind of have some people scared, but that doesn't mean that, in my mind, and I'm sure you agree, Bob, that the technology, if done, can be very powerful. And I think all nation states are looking for how do we take advantage and what can we do. And I think this is not a race you want to be in second place, right? Because you want to be first at the table. And I think this cooperation or competition between countries are actually helping the industry really push forward. So I agree on that part. I guess I'm just an optimist thinking that it's going to look good.
And we are seeing things like NATO funding quantum as well.
Exactly.
So,
I don't think we can underestimate the amount that government funding really does send positive signals across the private sector and investors too. But sorry, Ling, you wanted to come in there?
Yeah. I just wanted to add some data points. I think according to Sifted, there has been 147 quantum startups in Europe, and out of those, 60 are in quantum computing. So back to Bob's point, some of them, actually more than half, are actually not doing quantum computing, but doing quantum sensing and quantum imaging. But my sense is maybe the investment quantum amount to those startups perhaps are much smaller than the ones actually going to quantum computing, given the respective market size. And then from the research community side, there's an area I know a bit more. I guess there are regional strengths across Europe in different countries. For example, I think on the other side of the hall, the other room, Quantum Delta from the Netherlands, they are talking right now. And for example, Quantum Internet is strength from the Netherlands. And TU Delft is incredibly strong in this area. And ion traps in Austria, so some of the founding fathers of about ion traps are from Innsbruck. So AQT as a startup came from there. And also last year, Anton Zeilinger won Nobel Prize for quantum entanglement, and he's a professor based in Vienna. Actually, their research group has been collaborating with the Chinese quantum satellite research group, and broke world record several times. And for example, in the UK, it's very strong in several aspects in terms of quantum computing, in ion traps, in superconductors, and error correction, Riverlane, this company from Cambridge. And in France, Pascal, again, is neutral atoms leader. Professor Alain Aspect also won the Nobel Prize last year, and he's co-founder of this company. So there are, and in the wider supply chain, for example, Blue Force is dilution refrigerators supplier from Helsinki is providing the critical machines to all the quantum, either big corporates or startups everywhere around the world. And then Facecraft in the UK on the software side is very strong. Our investee Horizon Quantum in Singapore is also leading in the space, who actually just set up an office in Ireland. So I can see still lots of very vibrant startup scene flourishing everywhere around the world.
Ling, I'd love to just push on a little bit more about what you said there. So you mentioned some strengths in countries like Austria, for example, which is amazing. Are they playing to natural strengths within the wider tech sector, and that's why they're particularly strong in that area around quantum?
I think it's probably because of the leading scientists from those areas. So as some of the people may have heard when Stephanie just now mentioned, she also did quantum computing similar time as me, a few years after me. She mentioned 20 years ago, and we were from the same research group. If you look at the strengths, so several research groups, for example, Oxford, where I was from, I would deem it as the modern, how about the founding place of the modern day of quantum computing, with David Deutsch proposed it back in 1985. And then some of the key scientists in terms of quantum QKD, etc., they moved to Singapore, so which made Singapore very strong in quantum computing. And then similarly for Austria, very strong in ion traps and the photonics. And even in Sir Peter's panel, when they were talking about blind computation, some of the godfathers or godmothers, they are from Austria as well. So I think all these key leaders, they were the pioneers, and they still are in terms of quantum computing, helping start all these individual architectures or ways to realize a quantum computer, and developed the national strength in a way.
I think with Austria, it was the University of Innsbruck in particular. So it wasn't just the country. It was very specifically Innsbruck. It was the quality of the technical research and their ability to make a good business out of it. There are brilliant scientists all around the world who are terrible business people. I hate to say it, but there are some who are both, right? And there's some who are building companies, know how to bring in the right expertise with the help of investors and things like this. And in this case, AQT, Alpine Quantum Technology, is one of them.
That's fascinating. Thank you both. Rick, I'd love to bring you into this. Is there anything you'd like to add?
So I think as a VC fund, we do got a lot of funding from the government as LP. So what I can see in Europe, particularly in Germany, which you mentioned, so the government used to set up a very clear national quantum strategy, but before it's mainly discussion on the paper. But now we do feel they really want to deploy the capital into the market. As you probably see recently in the news, German Aerospace has basically signed several big contracts with several big quantum startups. Mm-hmm. One of our portfolio company, Planck, just signed a 29 million with a DSR. Unfortunately, I have to mention their name, otherwise they will blame me. So clearly we can see the government is definitely moving ahead. And also that's actually sent a very good signal on the private investor side, because one of the reasons we're making investment into Planck, because we know they have a high probability to sign a large contract with the government, which I mentioned earlier. Because of the quantum startup, you need a really strong funding capability, and that will actually give us more credibility to invest into the startup.
Perfect. And I think that in that support from government, it helps set certainty in what could potentially be an uncertain time. I love the dramatic lights that were going on when we started talking about uncertainty. Moving the conversation on ever so slightly, and it is looking at that kind of uncertainty piece. We are still in a relatively new field here. And your ROIs in quantum might look very different than if you're investing in a more established AI company or any other tech company. So how are you kind of measuring your short-term versus long-term success? And kind of a follow-on question from that, but how are you dealing with uncertainty around quantum? Steve, you're nodding. Do you want me to go to you first?
Sure. I think, you got to set the right expectations. If people are coming to you and saying, what's the ROI on quantum right now? You might be talking to the wrong people. The reality is you got to look for some near-term things that you can do with quantum. And we're looking at like QKD. We're looking at some sensing type things. But you also have to set the right expectations. And the reality is this won't be a reality until the future. So you got to find some value in early days, and maybe it is in the cyber area, but that's got to give you enough runway to be able to kind of think more longer term. So if people are asking you what's the ROI and I want something in 6 months, it doesn't bode well. It's about education, setting the right expectations, and also do experiments so you can learn about this technology. And that's kind of my suggestion. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll just kind of pass it on here.
Does anyone else want to come in on that question?
Last year, when I joined this Inflection, beginning of the year, I did investor calls because we were setting up for Series B. And it was great. They'd be like hour-long calls, right? I'd get to talk for half of it for quantum computing. It was wonderful. New guy, right? But by the time we got to the fall, it's like they didn't want to hear about quantum computing at all.
No.
So things change very quickly. The winds blow. If you last checked in on the quantum industry 6 months ago, you are way out of date, right? This is changing constantly, and geopolitical events are changing what the sensor market may be, what the atomic clock market will be, and things like this. So investors, it's hard. I mean, to stay really current and guess right. But that also makes it very interesting, right? In the same way.
If I could just add on to that, I mean, generative AI and kind of the explosion of ChatGPT, it just kind of took like, oh, you're a smart quantum guy. I want you to move over and just focus on generative AI. And so you got people like, hold on, that's not, I'm a quantum physicist, that isn't working. So it is, even that is distracting people from the efforts. So we see kind of that movement in priorities, thinking I can get real term value today. So it doesn't matter that you're not an AI expert. You're smart, you can kind of understand it. So it's just kind of interesting.
Someone asked me to write a book about that. And it's like, I know nothing about it.
Well, of course you have to.
I declined.
Yeah.
I will buy your book.
Rick, Ling, do you want to come in on that?
I think by nature, investments are uncertain. Even if with some of the mature companies nowadays, well, it could be really great P/E ratio, but on the results day, even it's just slightly underperform the expectations, the share price still can have huge swings. But with quantum, I feel it's certainty within uncertainty, in the sense that it's always a long-term bet from investors' perspective. If investors have the right mindset and knows once it's a breakthrough, then it will change everything, and probably at a much bigger magnitude than how large language models can change people's lives today. So I think the mindset is important. And if we look at other sectors, even though could have short-term gain in terms of Web3 investments, but very quickly those investments could may well be worth nothing. So in every sector there is a very the same uncertainty remains. So I guess the key is this is an intellectual play. So we need the key leaders who can actually bring the mankind, which brings the international collaboration as well, to that threshold to actually make that leap. For example, I think so despite there are so many quantum companies out there, we currently don't even have one single logical qubit yet. So that could be a measurement of success, and the companies around the world are working towards that milestone. So hopefully that will come very soon. And then secondly, just to bear in mind, it's a long-term play.
Just as Lin mentioned, so uncertainty is my job every day. So every day I deal with uncertainty. So, and also this is not the first time we're facing a big uncertainty. If you look at, you mentioned AI, think about the first wave of AI innovation, very similar actually. So there's lots of hype around it, and there's no real use case, people trying to figure out. So for us, it's really not a problem, I would say. And also, it's a topic we're trying to deal with every day. I think the simple answer from my side is we're trying to quantify the uncertainty. When I say trying to quantify, we divide the problem into market, technology, people, like most investors were doing, and we try to understand the risk behind it, and then we try to quantify them and to understand whether we can accept this type of uncertainty. So I guess that's going to be forever as a VC investor, unfortunately.
So the clock has started to flash orange, which I think it means we're very quickly coming to the end here. But what I would like to do is ask each panelist in turn, what is the final message you would like to leave our audience with today? Since I started with Steve and went this way, Rick, I'm going to start with you and go that way. So what final message would you like to leave the audience with today?
No problem, yeah. So I think quantum technology is, is getting very serious and internationally competitive. And we do see a lot of competition at the moment, which also I think we recognize is a necessary thing. It's also a good thing for the overall industry. However, we do believe there needs more collaboration between startup, between industrial player, and also even national level. So that's why on my side as investor, I really hoping there's more collaboration, particularly between the national level as well, to try to help this industry to accelerate the development. That's for me.
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Ling?
I think quantum last year had $2 billion of investment. And AI had $91 billion investment, probably well justified by the large language models hype, but it's a real thing. So given quantum could be as transformative as a technology, if not much more, I think there is still a lot of room to grow quantum investments.
Perfect.
Don't be a copycat. Look at the range of technology that's really going to make quantum computing and these other quantum applications real, right? This real advantage. Find the gaps that no one is looking at, but that are essential to fill. Go after those.
I was going to be a copycat and say the same thing.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'll use a line from Jerry Maguire. Instead of saying, show me the money, show me the value. And just focus on value. What value are you providing? And that cuts through a lot of stuff.
So we started with value. We are ending with value as well. So firstly, just thank you so much to all of our absolutely fantastic panelists for coming along today, sharing their invaluable insight. As the audience, I really do implore you to reach out to them after this event. Definitely talk to them, grow your network, and just, listen to their insights. I am going to stop talking because we are already over time, but thank you so much for listening to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's do a